The narrative around Shedeur Sanders' NFL debut is shifting faster than anyone expected. What started as a quick rush to judge him has now turned into a deeper investigation into what actually happened on that field. People saw the result, they saw the pressure, and they assumed Shedeur wasn't ready. But new information is revealing something completely different. Something that even many inside the Browns organization whispered about long before kickoff. Because the truth is simple, Shedeur wasn't just thrown into the fire, he was thrown into chaos with barely any preparation. Reports now confirm he got almost no first-team reps before being tossed into live action. Coaches made decisions that left him unprepared, not because he lacked talent, but because the situation around him was unraveling. Even veterans on the team privately questioned why a rookie quarterback was being set up like that. And once the game started, the problems around him became impossible to ignore. The offensive line was collapsing. Assignments were blown left and right. Free rushers came untouched, and the play calling never adapted to what Shedeur actually does best. No quick reads, no movement plays, no tempo adjustments, nothing that fits his natural strengths. Insiders now admit the scheme itself was flawed from the opening snap. But here's what shocked everyone. Shedeur didn't panic. He didn't fold. Even with all this chaos, he showed composure, awareness, and flashes that veterans took notice of. His ball placement, timing, and leadership in the huddle stood out far more than the stat sheet ever will. And that's exactly why the narrative is flipping. Analysts reviewing the tape are realizing most of the failures had nothing to do with Shedeur. Early critics are backtracking. People are now admitting he did everything he possibly could inside a broken situation. Which brings us to the bigger picture. This wasn't a failed debut. It was a test he never should have been given, but still managed to survive. And if this is what Shedeur looks like in total chaos, imagine what happens when the Browns finally decide to set him up for success. Because the real story isn't his debut. It's what comes next. The hidden context behind Shedeur Sanders' debut is something most fans never saw, and honestly, most critics never bothered to look for. Everyone judged the performance, the stat line, and the final score. But almost nobody understood the environment he walked into. Because behind the scenes, things were already unstable long before Shedeur ever stepped onto that field. For weeks, quiet conversations inside the Browns building hinted at cracks in the preparation process. Coaches disagreed on assignments, the offense lacked rhythm, and insiders claim practices grew increasingly tense. And right in the middle of that mess was a rookie quarterback trying to earn trust without being given consistent opportunities. Reports say Shedeur barely received meaningful first-team reps, which means he was studying a game plan he wasn't even allowed to practice at full speed. And that's not the only piece that changes everything. The protection around him wasn't just shaky, it was missing key veterans who usually set the tone up front. With injuries piling up and chemistry breaking down, the line struggled all week, and multiple insiders admitted the offense looked disconnected during preparation. By the time game day arrived, Shedeur wasn't stepping into a system built to support him. He was stepping into a system searching for answers. Then the game began, and every weakness the team tried to hide became obvious. Missed assignments, untouched rushers, miscommunication on basic protections, it all unfolded right in front of him. But instead of folding, Shedeur did something few rookies could ever pull off. He stayed calm. He read the field. He made throws under pressure that shouldn't have been possible, with defenders crashing in untouched. Veterans saw that. Coaches saw that. And now, analysts reviewing the tape are starting to say the same thing. The situation failed Shedeur, not the other way around. That's the real hidden context. This debut wasn't a fair test. It was a stress test. And even with everything working against him, Shedeur still showed the qualities of a future franchise quarterback. The performance wasn't the full story. The circumstances were. And once those circumstances improve, the narrative around him is going to shift even faster than it already has. What people saw on game day was just the surface. The real story of Shedeur Sanders' debut sits inside one of the most chaotic offensive collapses the Browns have had in years. And the wild part is this: almost none of it had anything to do with Shedeur himself. From the very first snap, the structure around him fell apart in ways no rookie quarterback, no matter how talented, could possibly overcome. The offensive line, usually the foundation of the entire system, came out looking disconnected and overwhelmed. Missed protections weren't rare, they were constant. Rushers came free on the edge, blitzers ran straight through the middle untouched. And there were moments where Shedeur barely finished his drop before someone was already in his face. Multiple veterans later admitted the communication up front felt off the entire game. And people reviewing the tape can see it clearly. The breakdowns weren't subtle. They were happening on nearly every drive. But the collapse didn't stop there. The receivers had their own issues, struggling to separate and drifting off timing routes that Shedeur had spent all week studying. On several plays, he made the right read, delivered the ball on time, and still found the window closing because the route was half a step late. That kind of thing doesn't show up in the box score, but it destroys an offense from the inside. And then there was the play calling. Slow to adjust, too rigid, and totally mismatched for the situation Shedeur was thrown into. Instead of quick hitters, rollouts, or tempo changes to slow down the pass rush, the offense kept calling long developing plays that required perfect protection, the very thing the team didn't have. It was a recipe for disaster, and everyone could see it unfolding in real time. Yet somehow, through all of this, Shedeur stayed composed. He moved in the pocket, kept his eyes up, and delivered throws under pressure that shouldn't have even been possible with the chaos around him. That's why so many analysts are rewatching the film and walking away with the same conclusion. The offense didn't just fail, it collapsed, and Shedeur was the only thing holding it together. What happened in Shedeur Sanders' debut wasn't just about the breakdowns around him. It was about how he responded when everything collapsed at once. And this is the part almost everyone missed. Because while the offense was falling apart in ways no rookie should ever have to deal with, Shedeur was doing things that veterans struggle with, showing a level of poise that didn't match his experience at all. If you go back and actually look at what he did on each drive, you start noticing a pattern that tells a completely different story from the one fans and critics rush to push after the game. First, let's talk about his composure. Most rookies, when the pocket crumbles instantly and the rhythm of the offense is gone, start speeding up, panicking, or forcing throws that lead to mistakes. Shedeur didn't. Even with defenders crashing through untouched, he stayed balanced in the pocket. His footwork stayed clean. Every time pressure came, instead of bailing out or throwing something reckless, he kept his eyes downfield and stayed calm enough to go through his reads. That alone shocked some veterans who have seen young quarterbacks fold the moment things get uncomfortable. But that composure wasn't empty. It turned into real production when it mattered. On multiple plays, Shedeur delivered throws that required ridiculous timing and accuracy. Tight windows, collapsing pockets, blitzers in his face. It didn't matter. He still placed the ball exactly where it needed to be. There were moments where his entire platform was disrupted. His feet weren't set, yet he still fired strikes that showed off arm talent the Browns haven't seen from a rookie in years. Then there's the mental side. What most people don't realize is that Shedeur was diagnosing coverages pre-snap faster than anyone expected. Even with the chaos around him, he recognized disguised blitzes, adjusted protections when he could, and changed plays at the line to get the offense into something manageable. That's veteran behavior. That's leadership. And that's why several players reportedly came away from the game saying the same thing. He handled it better than anyone expected. And the most impressive part? He never lost control of the huddle. Even when the offense was misfiring, even when protection broke again and again, he kept his teammates focused. No panic, no frustration, just steady leadership from someone playing his first ever NFL snaps. That's why the narrative is changing so fast. Once the tape came out, analysts realized Shedeur wasn't the problem. He was the bright spot. He showed maturity, toughness, accuracy, and command in a situation designed for failure. And if he can look that composed in total chaos, imagine what he'll look like when the Browns finally give him a real chance to succeed. The reason the narrative around Shedeur Sanders is flipping has nothing to do with sympathy and everything to do with the film. At first, people reacted to the scoreboard. They reacted to the stat line. They reacted to the fact that a rookie didn't walk into his first NFL game and look like a 10-year veteran. But once analysts actually slowed down the tape, the conversation changed almost instantly. What looked like a rough debut turned into one of the clearest examples of a young quarterback battling through a messy system that wasn't built to help him. The first thing that jumped off the screen was how often he was forced into impossible situations. Play after play showed free rushers, blown protections, slow developing routes, and a structure that didn't match his strengths. But instead of melting down, Shedeur kept showing a level of control that didn't match the chaos happening around him. Analysts noticed it. Former players noticed it. Even people inside the league started pointing out that Shedeur was actually making the right decisions far more often than anyone thought. Then came the accuracy. When the pocket briefly held, he delivered some of the cleanest throws the Browns have had all season. Tight window timing throws, layered passes over defenders, and calm checkdowns that avoided turnovers. Those aren't rookie flashes. Those are traits you see in quarterbacks who understand the game on a deeper level. What really flipped the narrative, though, was how his demeanor never changed. No panic, no finger pointing, no frustration on the sidelines. Just steady command despite everything working against him. That kind of poise is rare, and when veterans in the locker room started mentioning it privately, analysts began taking it seriously. And once that part of the story came out, everything else shifted. Suddenly, people weren't asking, is Shedeur ready? They were asking, how good could he be once the Browns give him a real structure? Because if he can stay that calm in a situation designed to break a rookie, it says something bigger than any box score ever could. It says the debut didn't expose his weaknesses. It exposed the weaknesses around him. And that's why the narrative isn't just changing. It's reversing completely. The conclusion to Shedeur Sanders' debut story isn't about the stat sheet, the final score, or the instant reactions that flooded social media. It's about perspective, something most people didn't have in the hours immediately following the game. Because once all the noise died down and people actually looked at how Shedeur played, not just what the scoreboard said, the entire picture started to shift. And that shift wasn't driven by hype or excuses. It was driven by evidence. When analysts started breaking down each offensive drive, something became impossible to ignore. Shedeur handled one of the most unstable environments a rookie quarterback could walk into, yet he still showed the traits that define long-term success. Poise under pressure, accuracy in chaos, command in the huddle. The kind of qualities you can't fake and you can't teach. Those are the things that stood out once the emotion faded, and the film took center stage. And that's where the real takeaway of this debut lives. He showed enough talent and maturity to make people rethink everything they thought they knew about him. Instead of collapsing under dysfunction, he operated through it. Instead of losing confidence, he gained respect. And instead of looking overwhelmed, he looked like someone who understood exactly what he was stepping into and responded with the calm of a quarterback who's been groomed for big moments his entire life. That's why the conversation shifted from blame to possibility, From he's not ready to imagine what he'll look like with real support. Because now the league has seen his floor, what he looks like when nothing around him works. And if that is the floor, the ceiling becomes a much more exciting question. The Browns now face a different kind of pressure. They can't hide behind excuses or deflect.